Thanks for staying with Citizen Weekend. The latest from Moi, Nairobi girls, where reports of the defilement of a child at dawn have reached our newsrooms, is that the Education CS Amina Mohammed has instructed, after the insistence of parents, that they pick their children at 8 a.m. tomorrow as they leave the school's compound for an early midterm, which will be for 1 week. The latest from Moi Girls Nairobi is that the Education Cabinet Secretary, who is currently within the school's compound, has advised parents to pick their children at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, which is the 3rd of June 2018. The children will then proceed on midterm, which is actually an early midterm, as investigations into the rape of the student at Moi Nairobi Girls continues. The latest that we have from the school is that parents have been asked to vacate the school's premises as of now and return tomorrow to pick their children for an early half-term. Let's proceed with tonight's conversation, which is on the best way to find a nanny in Kenya. And questions have been asked over who is to blame. Is it the employer, in most cases, this being the woman of the house, or is it the nanny? A lot of horror stories have also been told over nannies exposing children to health risks, over nannies treating children in a manner that is close to abusive, and of course a lot of concerns over these persons that mothers and fathers are leaving their children under the care of. With me in studio tonight is Triza Kimani, who is the Managing Director, Nanny Employee Leasing Company. Thanks for joining us. And I'm also joined by Rehema Ibrahim, who is the Deputy National Treasurer, the Union of Kenya Civil Servants. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's begin with the 10 must-ask questions before hiring a nanny. And there you have it on your screens. Need to bear in mind some of the questions that you need to have prepared even as you proceed to find a nanny in Kenya. This week, one of our local celebrities, Jackie Nyaminde, who is popularly known as Wilbroda on Citizen TV's production Papa Shirandula, came out to give an account of how she found out that her nanny was breastfeeding her child. A shocked Jackie proceeded, of course, to take action after finding out that the nanny had been doing this without her knowledge. Let's listen into Jackie's story.
This particular lady, through a referral, and she was really amazing. You know, she was an amazing lady, and we clicked off almost immediately. And you could even tell the relationship between her and my son was really good, you know. And I was very comfortable with her, even the number of times I'd travel. And about that time, I used to travel a lot, you know. So I completely trusted her. And so when I got this call one day from a neighbor who refused to reveal her name. You know, she told me, I will not tell you who I am, but I was visiting in your estate, and the house help of that house told me that this is what goes on. And I was shocked, and I asked her, does she do it in front of people? She's like, yes, like when the baby is crying, she actually just does it, you know, in front of the other helps. And I was in shock. I was actually out of town. and I had to take the first flight back, and I came back, and well, I took my baby to the hospital very late in the night, you know, very, very late in the night, and it was very hard even for me to go to the lab. So my sister did it for me, and they went with the baby, and I was glad and grateful. I cried that the baby was fine. But when I looked at it, I don't think she did it knowingly, or she did it to harm my child. I think she was doing it to calm the baby, because, I mean, in the African culture, or I don't know if I should call it that, but a lot of times we find that, you know, a lactating mother, or just a woman breastfeeding another person's child, was not such a big of a deal back then, you know, not like it is right now. But you would find that when a mother passed away, you know, giving life, then that baby was taken care of by even the grandmother, and the grandmother would breastfeed that baby. You know, it was something that happened very normally, very naturally, you know. So I think that was the whole idea with her. So I don't call her the house help from hell, because I've had a lot of people call her that, but I don't think she did that intentionally, because really, if it was to infect my son, then there were easier ways of doing it, because she was not even a lactating mother herself. She had a daughter who was about 4 years and was living up country with her mother. Yeah. So yeah, basically that's what happened. And I think for me, it's just it's really important to, as an adult, to get yourself tested. A lot of people have been asking me, so how do I get my house help, you know, to go and get tested? Because of course, first of all, it's even against the law to force someone to go for a test. So I look at it as, I would encourage my house help, and I would tell her, let's go together, you know. We are both adults, let's go together. I wouldn't even make it look like it's your results that I'm really interested in. I would make it look like we both need it, because that's the truth, you know. I would take all the adults that are in the house, and I would encourage them and tell them, come on, let's go for this test, you know, all of us. And it's also just the way you live with your house help, and spending even more time with your family, with your kids, because as parents, it's very clear that we don't take our responsibilities very seriously. We are busy out there hustling, and we leave all the responsibilities to our helps in the house, to the teachers. And I just believe that we need to be more involved in our children's lives. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for that. That's Jackie Nyaminde, popularly known as Wilbroda, from Papa Shirandula, and also a radio host. I'll start with you, Teresa, and before we even get into how to find a nanny and, you know, just what the best way to do that is, in terms of health and the health risks, you know, around, for instance, somebody breastfeeding your child, like Jackie spoke of there, the possibility of exposure to HIV. What does the law say about actually demanding or requesting that the person that you're leaving your child under the care of, or the person that you're employing, takes some of these tests?
I think the law is clear. You can't force someone to go to take a test so that you employ them, because in any office, your employer does not ask you to go for HIV tests for you to employ you. So I think when you come to labor, we need to take it across the board. If we are very comfortable in the offices doing like this, why does it change when it goes to the domestic workers? What I like about what that lady said, she said that I'm volunteering all of us to go, the employer, the employee, the children, and everybody. So that it doesn't look like it is about the employee only, because your sister, your brother can be HIV positive. So how do, or your relative who can do exactly what that worker did. So how do you mitigate that? So I think it's a whole issue of stigma around a domestic worker, thinking that only your employee can infect your child, but it can also be your relative. So what do you do with that?
Okay, and the best way to find a nanny in Kenya, there's concerns over whether it's more convenient to just go to an agency or a bureau, or whether referrals would be a better option.
I think even for agencies, use referrals. So I think referrals is very important, because also agencies use the referral model to source their workers. But as an individual, if you go directly, you may not have the time to vet properly, because most time people go in a hurry. It's very desperate for you. You don't even have the time to process that particular worker. So you are thinking about needing a worker as opposed to what is the process that is involved.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked about agencies or bureaus is the fact that there's been criticism over the fact that bureaus collude with the nannies or the house help to work for a short while and leave, only for the bureau to give them a placement elsewhere, which then makes this bureau business almost like a money minting business or a money minting project, and therefore as the employer you don't really have the assurance that this person is here to stay. And
that's why company like Nanny exists, because for us we outsource staff. So when we give you a staff, we have a stake in it. So I have no business removing a worker from your home, because I earn so long as that worker is in your home. So I'll have no interest in withdrawing the worker. But obviously the bureau earns by the number of people they keep shuttling from one house to another. So maybe people need to consider outsourcing as opposed to directly employ the workers themselves.
Right, the best place to have an interview with the nanny before hiring them. Sometimes new mothers or even busy career persons are extremely overwhelmed by the fact that, first of all, there's nobody in the house to take care of these children. So they prefer to have the interviews right within the home, so that if they like the person, then, you know, let's get this started. What's the best place to have an interview?
I think it depends from one person to another. For us, we take the employee in a place that you are comfortable to interview. So if you are comfortable to interview in our office, that's fine. If you are comfortable to interview in your house, because you could be having a small baby and you may not be able to come all the way to the office.
But there's also the security risk of bringing in a random person into your home, and yet you're not sure whether or not you're going to eventually take them on board.
I wouldn't say it's random, because the person has already been vetted by the agency. That's
if they're coming from an agency.
Oh, if it's directly from, of course it's risky, because you haven't vetted that person.
Okay, thanks for that, Triza. I'm coming back to you. To you, Rehema, the importance of having a binding contract and how to go about this, if at all you agree that this is the person that's going to be working for you, the importance of having a binding contract.
Thank you very much, sister. I would want to take it the bureau way, because there's already a structured way that they're doing this. But the normal way that we hire and fire has no contract. But I think the labor laws are there to guide each and every employment in the country. Yes.
And I want to just take you back to something that I actually picked up from a conversation I was having with somebody. There was never a binding contract. The employer took the house helps or the nanny's ID, and when the nanny eventually had to leave because she was dismissed from this place of work, the nanny then came to the union and later slipped some letter demanding days of leave and demanding this amount, this crazy amount, and therefore, you know, just some enlightenment on both sides, both the employer and the employee, on the structure of this binding agreement between these two and what entirely is expected from both parties.
Thank you very much. I'm more conversant with the contract between the civil servants and the employer, But by and large, there's this union called Kudeha, who have now taken on board being the union for the house helps and the casual workers and all those people. So what there is, the law demands that if you're employing somebody, there should be that contract, that binding contract. That is the employment letter, which in most cases is neither here nor there. Actually, maybe through the bureau it happens, but through other sources of hiring nannies, it's not there. I've never heard of a person who has decided that this is the contract that I've done by myself. So I think it would be very, very important that such is regulated through having more agencies do it properly the way the labor laws require.
So there's no standardized contract based on what the labor laws require as of now?
I want to believe that it should be there in Kudeha, that that is the union that is directly taking care of the working conditions of nannies. And still a lot needs to be done in terms of educating the nannies so that they really understand that they need all this. They are protected. At least there's some protection that they would go and work there with the responsibility, with a future. And at the same time, there's the assurance from the employer that this person, we are under these working conditions that we both need to adhere to.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what are the issues that you've observed with employers over the years that compromise their relationship with domestic workers? I mean, we're talking about this being a two-way street where I treat your child the way you treat me. So when it comes to the employer, we're not entirely saying that this employer is 100% innocent. And a lot of people are very quick to say that the nanny did this to my baby, the nanny did this to my husband. So when you, in your years working in the union, what have you observed as some of the things that employers do that really antagonize these girls or houseboys?
Okay, basically, it's the attitude that the employers have towards the employees. There's no bonding. People hardly talk. They don't talk. Maybe at most of the time they don't even give their expectations to the nanny or the houseboys. So they learn through guesswork, and there's a lot of noise. There is lack of love. You don't love, you love your children, but you don't love the person who is taking care of your children. And so, and the fear, not even the respect. There is the fear bit of it. I fear my boss. I don't respect him, but I fear him. Or I don't respect her, but I fear her. So due to intimidation and lack of conversation, dialoguing here and there, really brings all these issues. And then the nannies and the houseboys tend to fight back through harming our children, through instigating certain things that are not common, or rather not normal, like what happened to Wilbroda. It's unfortunate, but a lot of these things happen and you don't really understand. And when you talked about the issues of testing, for example, you can interview this lady and even ask them. Others would be candid enough to tell you that I'm suffering from this. I got one, my heart sank, but I said, this is a human being like me, it can happen to me. So I decided to hire that girl. And we spent a very cordial time. And the best she told me was that you'd be giving me offs on a monthly basis after every 2 months so that I can go for my ARVs. And I was very comfortable with that, because if somebody discloses that in advance, then you also know how to relate. And with a few knowledge here and there about HIV related issues, you'd also advise them on how to handle a lot of issues. But I'm glad that a lot of education that has taken place has made the stigma almost 90% died out.
Right. Thanks for that, Rehema. To you, Teresa, same question that I've put forward to Rehema here on some of the things that employers do. You find, for instance, there are those employers who in a cycle have this cycle where they change nannies in like a month. You've got 3 3 nannies. And that begs the question, therefore, who is the problem? So some of the things that employers might be doing that might be antagonizing the help.
I think one of the issues is expectations. I think when you employ someone, it's good to set your expectations right. And you also need to do orientation. You know, I come to your house and you expect that I'll be able to know what you need and how I need to your things done. So proper orientation is very important. Being able to set your expectations, both of you, is very important. And also being able to treat a domestic worker like an adult. Because most of times is that we treat these people like children.
How do you as agents vet? That's a question that's coming in. A nanny travels from up country and comes to your agency. So explain to us your vetting process.
First of all, most of our workers are via referral. We have a big staffing base. So we usually ask our workers to recommend. Do they know people who could work for us? Sometimes employers who have employed those people before recommend them for us. So after you come to our office, you usually go through an interview process. You're expected to give us a letter of the chief from your local area, because we really need to know where are you coming from. And we also need, ask for disclosure. Is there anything that we need to know that may affect your employment? So after the interview process, we also go through an orientation training to get to know you more. Because there's some things you tell us during interview, but as we start doing the orientation, you relax, and then you're able to know you a bit more.
And want to talk about security within the home. When you hear of people who actually install cameras within their home, CCTV, or whatever other security cameras that you might want installed within the home. And by the way, we understand that this can range from anything between 5,000 to well over 100,000, depending on how many cameras and how sophisticated the technology. How efficient or necessary would you say this is? Because I personally am frightened over planting cameras and not telling the help that I'm spying on you.
Okay, what we normally do, we let the employees know that whenever you go to a home, those cameras will be there. So psychologically they know the cameras are there. So there are some who will even decline to take a job.
Do you think it's a wise move?
I think it is. It is. I don't find any problem with it, so long as you're also careful to maintain the privacy. So even as you put the cameras, of course there are places that you shouldn't put the cameras, so that privacy. And
as we start to close, Triza, what would you say is decent pay, and what are you considering when you're talking about this figure?
I think the guidance is a minimum labor law, the minimum wage, which is currently around 11,000 Kenya shillings. 11,000. What about for somebody who earns 20,000? It's a government which has put the law, so I think I'm the wrong person to answer that question.
Maybe you're just high end. Perhaps from you, Rehema, what would you say is decent pay?
Things are very tough, but because a lot of laws are not followed, the government decided to put some minimum wage. But unfortunately for the civil servants, it's the same minimum wage of between 11,000 and 14,000. So practically, can you pay 11,000?
Not a lot of people can.
Not a lot of people can. So this is now the problem, where the problem lies, that the employer might not be willing not to pay, but at the end of the day, they can't afford it. And so there's also the regulation bit of it to really follow up and ensure that that minimum wage is paid. But if you look at the situation in Kenya, it's about the understanding between you and the person, the amount of work done also regulates that. Law is law, but here you are you are employed, for example, by the government that gives you the same minimum wage, maybe house allowance, a bit of it, and commuter allowance, but it doesn't add up. Looking at the inflation rate in Kenya now as we speak.
Yeah.
So you might not be able to really implement that. But law is law at the end of the day.
Yeah, of course, already reactions coming in on the fact that once you underpay your help, then you're also calling for a lot of complications within the home. And finally, in terms of career mothers over-delegating their responsibilities to the house girl, your observation over this trend where people are just too busy and therefore the house girl is bathing the child, the house girl is feeding the child, the house girl or nanny is sitting with a child to do the homework with a child. What have you observed with this trend?
Okay, it happens every day in our lives, but it's just to appeal to the parents, not even the mothers only, even the fathers to take responsibility, because at the end of the day, these children need us. It happens because of our busy life. But whatever little time that you get off your busy schedule, take time to talk to your children, take time to do the basics that a mother could do to the children.
Right, and somebody already saying it's important to bathe your child once in a while because then you will notice if there's any injuries or if there's any signs of abuse. And therefore, for mothers out there and even daddies, when you can, try and bathe your child, try and find time to bathe your child. And finally, from you, Teresa, as we close, the best way to find a nanny. You yourself are running an agency, and a lot of mothers and parents are writing in here and saying, we don't know where to go. We are tired of referral after referral that gets disappointing. So how can people find you?
Okay, I think for us we have a website, www.nanny.co.ke, Nanny, N-A-N-I. So you just go in there, read about us, and then there is a place you can just send your application, and this will be able to serve you. Yeah.
And finally, your parting remarks over career mothers over delegating their responsibilities to the nanny.
I think it's all about balance. There are responsibilities that nanny can do, and there are those that only a mother can do. Like the Wilbroda said, only a mother can breastfeed. So don't overstretch delegation. So balance.
Right.
That's important.
Thanks for that, Teresa. Let's take your feedback. And somebody here is saying a lot of your messages are actually over health concerns and finding out that the nanny might be ill, and of course both our panelists have addressed that concern. Somebody here saying that one may be HIV negative today but be HIV positive tomorrow, and therefore a test or the demand for a test does not take away the risk, and therefore it's better just to converse, and trust is very key in all of this. Somebody saying hiring a nanny is an important decision that requires a lot of research and patience because your child's safety and development is at stake. Doris, you're saying, seems like nannies breastfeed children in the absence of their mothers. I personally got my house girl breastfeeding my son. It really affected me. I don't know whether to tell my son now that he is 9 years. This is Doris on Dear Key. I like the discussion on hiring nannies. Until people realize nannies should be treated as family, then you should not hire one. We thank you so much for your feedback. And one very basic comment here that somebody is, and this is really the rule of thumb, that you cannot be having a 5-star meal and serving your nanny a lesser meal. That let's live with our nannies as families. They are also human beings. And finally, if you're in a cycle where you change like 3 girls in a month, you need to reevaluate yourself and see if there's something you're not doing right. In any case, it's not possible that all those nannies have a problem. It could be you. So it's a 50-50. Treat the nanny as you would want them to treat your child or to treat you. Uniform, yes or no? Optional. Decent. Okay, I thank you so much for your time. We were joined by Teresa Kimani. She's given you her details. She's the MD Nanny Employee Leasing Company. You can reach out to her if you're having problem sourcing for a nanny, and of course also joined by Rehema Ibrahim, Deputy National Treasurer, Union of Kenyan Civil Servants, outlining to us what the rights of these domestic workers are, what a decent pay essentially is, and how you should treat them. We thank you for your time. That's all the time we had. My name is Lillian Muli. Good night.